we thought we were done at the end of the interview. And he reacted in a strong way to the material that we showed him, and then he got up and said goodbye, and we thought that was the end. But his microphone kept recording. We always leave the microphone on him. He knows that, and he went to the bathroom while it was recording. And it wasn't until months later that we had an editor listening to material that we had just sort of left behind, thinking, well, now we've got to listen to everything we've got. We're about to finish the series. And we discovered that we had this shocking piece of audio.
Who is Robert Durst, and why was he still out on the streets? The subject of the HBO documentary series The Jinx was busted in New Orleans over the weekend in the case of a 15-year-old murder. But there is so much more to the life and times of the man who seems to be almost happy to discuss his crimes and has managed to elude punishment for decades. Let's get some perspective here. Welcome in New York criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and host of Talkin' Law Radio, Daniel Hochheiser joins us. Dan, good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Ed.
Afternoon. Dan, from a legal standpoint, why are we making such a big deal about Robert Durst, save for the fact he seems to have gotten away with it once and maybe even twice? It's such an interesting story.
Well, this story has all the elements. This is a wealthy man from one of the wealthiest real estate families in New York City, the Durst family, and he has been a suspect in Kathleen Durst, his wife's disappearance, since 1982, and he was acquitted of murdering Morris Black in Galveston, Texas, after the police found Black's body in the Galveston River chopped up. And now we have this new arrest, which concerns the prosecution's theory is that he attempted to silence Susan Berman, who was a witness against him, perhaps, in the disappearance of his wife.
Now, wait a minute, let's back up a little bit. 1982, his wife vanished. She was talking about her desire to get a divorce from him. They were fighting the night she disappeared, according to a friend, worried what Durst might do to her. Why have they not been able to find anything? Is there no shred of evidence whatsoever that ties him to this murder?
Until Saturday, or Sunday rather, when the HBO special had that hot mic on him in the bathroom where he said, "This is a disaster, I'm caught, I killed them all, of course." They may try to use that to build a case against him in New York for Kathleen Durst's disappearance. But remember, Ed, they don't have a body in that case. They never found her. So it's going to be a little difficult to prove she's dead.
All right, now let's talk about the HBO documentary here, because they seem to have uncovered more evidence than the authorities had in years here. How is that possible? Did this case just sort of while itself away? I mean, they stopped paying attention to it? What happened here?
Well, you know, you have cold cases frequently in law enforcement, and sometimes the authorities run out of leads, and then the investigations are reactivated. Here, Andrew Jarecki, who is the director for HBO, did a brilliant job strategizing. He made this movie, All Good Things, which was a reasonably fair depiction from the point of view of Robert Durst, who then felt comfortable participating in The Jinx, this documentary. And Jarecki really played Lieutenant Columbo with him and finally got him with a smoking gun piece of evidence, which is this letter which was uncovered from Susan Berman's stepson.
Now, I've got to go back to, because the more you read this, the better it becomes. I mean, there's got to be a feature film in the making here if you look at it. But then you look at this other woman that he's involved with, and this is Berman. Apparently, garbage bags with dismembered body parts were found floating in the water off Galveston, Texas. They had a receipt in one of the bags and a trail leading to his apartment. That led to Durst being charged with murder. Dan, how come they weren't able to pin this guy?
He claimed self-defense, and Morris Black was dead and couldn't counter the self-defense argument. So he prevailed on the Galveston jury. He was convicted with tampering with some evidence and bail jumping, and he did, I believe, 5 years. But now he's really in a much worse position in this new LA case with the Murder One prosecution concerning Susan Berman, because they have this letter which is in very similar writing from the anonymous note sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department shortly after Susan Berman's death.
It was a letter written by Mr. Durst to Ms. Berman in which the lettering of the address on the envelope appears identical to that of the cadaver note, which was earlier, down to the misspelling of Beverly Hills as Beverly with an L-E-Y. So they've got all these pieces here. Okay, fine. Let's put this into some legalese here. HBO gets certain pieces of evidence here. They now have it as part of a documentary. Now, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I just play one on TV, which is why I talk to people like you. It would seem to me as if the prosecutors are going to have a difficult time putting this all together and trying to see if this evidence was garnered properly, correct?
I don't think so. I think the prosecutors are in very good shape in the Susan Berman case. They're going to show this anonymous note about the cadaver, which was written to the Beverly Hills Police Department. That note, written in block letters with Beverly misspelled with an extra E before the Y, matches the letter turned over by Susan Berman's stepson to HBO, which has the same block letters and the same misspelling of Beverly, which connects that letter, which Durst admits he wrote, to the anonymous letter, which was obviously written by the killer, since he's the one who told the police the cadaver is there. Furthermore, using the word cadaver in that anonymous note is very telling because remember, Kathleen Durst was a medical student and there were reports that she had worked with cadavers, so only the killer who had a close relationship with her would use that word in a note.
I only got about a minute left here. Is this a guy who, quite frankly, is just a whack job, or has he really just been playing the system perfectly? Because he dresses up as a woman, he changes his ID, he's got millions of dollars and floats around the country. Who is this guy?
He's a whack job, and he knows exactly what he's doing, in my opinion. Obviously, we know he's a whack job. He was living under an alias for quite some time and hiding as a woman, a mute, deaf woman. He was arrested not recently, but over the past several years for urinating in a pharmacy and for shoplifting a sandwich in a store. So this is not a guy who is all there, but he knows what he's doing. He's pretty slick. And over the last 30-something years, he has 3 bodies closely associated with him, and he hasn't been convicted.
All I'm going to say is let's make sure that Oliver Stone doesn't get a hold of a script here because, I mean, seriously, this could rival JFK as one of the great conspiracy movies of all time with all sorts of dark holes and dark avenues here and there. Daniel Hochheiser, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thanks for joining us, and please, hopefully, Mr. Durst will go away for a long, long time. All right, take care, Dan. Next up, the American taxpayer and the illegal immigrant in college. Specifically, what happens when you're taking time, according to some reporters, to spend more time and more taxpayer money on the illegals and not on American veterans. It's coming up next, right here on MidPoint.